All right, Grandma. Well, let's start out by just you giving us your name.
Well, my name is Mary Agnes Gipson Beatty.
And where were you born?
I was born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1925 in St. Joseph's Hospital.
What school did you go to when you were growing up?
Well, we didn't stay in Memphis, Tennessee, but a few months. And then we moved to Clarksdale, Mississippi. And I went to a Catholic school when I first started school, like pre-K. And then I went over to primer, it wasn't even, it was sort of like a pre-first grade. And I stayed there. That was a public school.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the only 2 years that I went to school in Clarksdale.
So in Clarksdale, I know everybody likes Christmas. What was one of your favorite memories of Christmas?
Well, we lived on State Street, and I was in my mother's bedroom, and I got interested in all the makeup she had on her dresser. So by the time I got through exploring, I had makeup all over everything, my face, my arms, everywhere. And Mother, I heard the doorbell ring, and Mother came and said, Agnes, I want you to come on out. Everybody call me Agnes. I want you to come on out in the living room because somebody's here. So I went out and I looked down. I couldn't hold my face up. I was too embarrassed. And I saw the big white beard and the jolly red suit, and I knew it was Santa Claus. And I knew I had been very, very naughty, and I couldn't look at him. And I know he was laughing because I know it was my daddy.
So what kind of gifts did you get for Christmas that year?
Well, we got Rita and I, my sister, and we got a real pretty china doll, just beautiful china doll, and all dressed up in organdy. And we were excited about our dolls, and we were walking down the block to show them to a friend, and I dropped my doll, and it just broke all to pieces. So I went home, and didn't want to show it to my mother, but I had to. And she said, well, we'll just turn the cap around. And she turned the cap around, and that made the doll look like it had a face. But I felt so sad. I lost my doll, and I felt bad for my mother, too. I know she felt as bad as I did.
But she turned it around and made it look like it had a face anyway. So
yeah, so I kept it. We played with it like that, and it was okay.
So did it snow where you live?
Yes, it snowed a lot in Clarksdale that year. When I was in my childhood years, I remember it snowing a lot. And Mother used to make snow ice cream for us, and that was always a treat. We always enjoyed it very much.
So tell me about all of your brothers and sisters.
Well, there was Rita and Edie and I when we lived in Clarksdale.
So Rita was the oldest?
Rita was the oldest. I was in the middle. And then there was one between Edie and I that had died. And then Edie was the baby.
Did you ever have to take care of your younger sisters?
Oh, I had to take care of Edie. When Rita and I don't know if I really had to take care of her, if we just pestered Mother enough and asked her if we could roll her in a buggy, and she finally let us. But I turned the buggy over, and Edie toppled out. And I was so frightened, I didn't want to tell my mother. And I didn't want my sister to tell her. And she held that over my head for years. And finally I told her, I said, I don't care anymore, I'm tired of this. I said, I'm going to tell Mama. And she said, I don't care if you tell her. And she never held it over my head anymore. But I know my mama must have known by then.
Well, I think she turned out just fine.
Yeah, she did.
So how old were you when the Depression started?
Well, I guess we were still living in Clarksdale, so I must have been around 5, because I was just I hadn't started first grade yet. And my daddy worked for Swift and Company, and he lost his job. And
so what did y'all do after he lost his job? Were y'all able to stay where you were living, or?
no, we moved to Philadelphia, Mississippi, to live with my grandmother and my grandfather, and they had a farm, and we stayed there until Daddy could settle everything in Clarksdale, and then he came and got us, and we moved to Alexandria after we had been at Daddy Tom's for about I guess maybe the summer. Then we moved to Alexandria, and we lived with my great aunt Kate O'Day, and she lived downtown on 8th and Elliott, and that's where we lived.
So what was the house like over there? Did y'all have a lot of appliances, like refrigerators or anything?
No, we didn't have an icebox. We didn't have electric stoves or anything like that. We didn't have a telephone. We didn't have any of the modern conveniences, a washing machine or anything. And my sister and I used to go to the ice house every day to get the ice. And Mama cut off a broomstick, and the man at the ice house would tie the ice in the middle of the broomstick, and Rita would take one end and I'd take the other end, and we'd walk back home and carry the ice home to Mom.
That way?
So we did get cool ice, cool drinks from time to time.
Well, I'm sure everybody appreciated
Yeah,
that.
I think we all did, and we had fun doing that. That was one of the things that Rita and I did that we liked to do.
So, did you have heat or air conditioning or anything like that at the house?
No, we didn't have electric heat. We had to use space heaters. And my little sister Edie, she must have not been over about a year and a half or 2 years old. She went to a little friend's house. Mother would let her play over just around the corner with her little friend. And she backed up against the little space heater, because those space heaters, the fire came out like that. Now some of them they would go up, but this one came out. And the fire caught Edie's little dress in the back. And the mother rolled her in a rug right away. And they let Mother and Daddy know. But it was a real, real hard time for my mother and Daddy, because they had to keep her in a little tent. She had to lay right flat on her stomach, and they had a little homemade tent that they built up over her bed, and they had an electric light bulb that they kept burning all the time, and she had to stay like that for 3 months. And they would take her and put her in the tub, and they would have to pull all that dead skin off every day, 2 or 3 times a day. And they kept some kind of purple medicine on it, that she had that medicine on her all the time. It was right on her bottom.
Yeah. So what school did you go to while you were there living with Aunt Kate?
We went to St. Francis Xavier, and I love St. Francis Xavier, and I still do. It was just wonderful. We had a lot of friends, and I just loved the sisters. I loved the school. That was my school. So far as I was concerned, that was my school, and I still feel that way.
So what were your grades like over there?
Well, I wasn't a very good student. I liked English and typing. When I got older, I took typing, and I liked that. And but I never was too good with geography and trying to find the questions and answers. And then on the test, they'd change them all up, and I didn't know what they were talking about. So I never did do too good with that. But I did learn how to do geometry and algebra. I couldn't do it now, but I did do it. I was able to work the problems that they would give me in school.
So would you say you were a competitive child?
Oh gosh, was I ever? When I was in the first grade, I guess it wasn't first grade, it was primer, that's what. And the sister would play games with us. You know, got to play a lot of games. And one of the games was she'd throw peanuts all over the room, and then one that got the most peanuts would kind of like win. And nobody could get more peanuts than me. I went around gathering all the peanuts. My pa was about like that, and I looked around, nobody else had any peanuts. So I was pretty competitive.
Yeah. So did they have any plays or talent shows or anything like that?
Well, they always had plays at St. Francis. That was one. They didn't have a lot of theater other than what the schools put on. And we had a downtown auditorium that had everything for theater. They had all the lights, the different colored lights, a beautiful stage, a beautiful auditorium. And the first year I was there, they were looking for a lead for a child, and they selected me. And the name of the show was Gertie the Goop. So that was me. I was Gertie the Goop. But my mother made me a real pretty little calico dress, a little flowered calico dress that it had a little Peter Pan collar and puff sleeves, and had a sash with the bow in the back. I had the little black hair, was straight like they always wore in those days, and black eyes. And I was Gertie the Goop.
So did you ever see any of those same people that you were in school with later on?
Yes, 50 years later, one of the Sisters of Divine Providence was at St. Thomas More. That's my parish church now. And I knew that my first grade teacher, or the primer teacher at that time, was still living. And so I told Sister Diane, I said, when you see Sister Frances Jerome, that was my first grade teacher, I said, would you tell her, ask her if she remembered Gertie the Goop, and tell her that she hadn't changed much. She hadn't changed very much.
So during the Depression, did you realize that you were poor?
Well, we were really happy. We loved Mom and Daddy, and we knew Mom and Daddy loved us. But the only way we knew something was wrong, we knew that we didn't have a lot of clothes, and we didn't go to the show on weekends. We couldn't do a whole lot of that. We had to save our pennies a long time to get to go to a Saturday matinee. But when Mother would feel sad about it, and you could see her tears in her eyes, and she'd feel real bad because we didn't have fresh milk, and there was a lot of times she felt like we didn't have the proper food that we needed all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's when we realized that if it hadn't have been for that, we wouldn't have known the difference. Yeah. Because we were very happy. I think I had a very happy childhood in those days.
Were any other children born at Aunt Kate's?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did have another one born over there. That was Judy. My little sister was born when we lived at Aunt Kate's. And so that was me and Rita and Edie and Judy when we lived in that part of my life when I was in grade school, little child in grade school. There were 4 of us.
So what?
And we were all girls.
So what happened to Aunt Kate?
Well, Aunt Kate died. She was 90 years old, and Mother took care of her. And when she needed something, she would go on her back porch. There was a porch. We lived in the little house behind her at that time. At first, we lived with her, but then we moved to the little house behind her, and she'd go on the porch and she'd do her cane and make enough noise for us to hear her. And we would have to go see about her, and Rita spent the night over there with her every night, and we took care of her. And she died when she was 90 years old.
Lived a pretty long time.
Yeah, she had a long life.
So after she died, did y'all end up moving?
Yes, my daddy took a civil service test, and he did well enough to get employed with the federal government in civil service. And we moved out to the edge of town, and my mother sold her wedding ring, and we bought a house, a 2-bedroom house. And there was a big field next to us at that time. And when she sold her wedding ring, she bought a cow. And Then we had a refrigerator, a telephone, electric lights, fans, and a washing machine, and everything, all the appliances at that time. They had radios, but they didn't have television.
Right.
And we didn't have air conditioning.
Well, how big was the house? How many rooms were in it?
It was 2 bedrooms, and there was a porch on the back, and Mother and Daddy never knew a stranger. And Daddy working for the employment service and them building so many army camps around there, there were a lot of workers that would come in, and they didn't have a place to live because the soldiers were bringing their families in and trying to have, everybody was renting rooms. And Mother took in, I think, 3 of the workers that were working in the camps. And then she had her sister that wanted to live and work in Alexandria. And she had her come in. And then there was another friend of theirs that we knew in Clarksdale that they were so close we called their children cousins. And they protected me too. They wouldn't let anybody do anything to their cousin. And so they wanted to move to Baton Rouge and see if they could do better. Everybody was not working like my daddy was by that time. And but things were getting started and things were popping up, and there was a population explosion like. And so we had a house full by then, and Mother put tar paper over that back room, and that's where the Devaney stayed right there. They were very, very good friends, and Mother and Daddy could never say no.
So you said you had a porch. Did y'all have a swing on that porch?
Oh, that was our front porch. Yes, That we had a swing on our front porch, and I was babysitting with my little sister, and we were swinging, and she toppled out of the swing, and she cut her lip very, very bad. And she had to go and get it stitched, and she cried, and I cried, and I felt so sad that I had let that happen to her. I really did feel bad about that, because I was supposed to be taking care of her. I felt like it was my fault.
So how old were you when the Depression ended?
Oh, I was about 7 or 8. Mm-hmm.
So, and at that time, were you still going to St. Francis?
Yes, at that time we went to St. Francis.
So how did you get to school?
Well, when we moved out on Hope Street, when Mama sold a ring and Daddy got his job, we moved out on Hope Street on the edge of town. We still went to St. Francis, but Daddy had gotten a little car, and he would take us in the mornings when he went to work, and then in the afternoons we'd walk home, and he'd bring some of the neighbors that wanted to go. One especially that lived about a block from us, he'd pick her up every day, and they were very good friends.
So I know you're interested in music, so when did you get started with this?
Oh, well, Daddy bought me an old piano when we lived out on Hope Street, and I noticed that I'd hit a note and it would work, and hit another note and it wouldn't work. So I pulled up the top of the piano and I looked in, and I pushed the note and it had something connecting it to make it make the tone. And I'd push the one that wouldn't play and it didn't have anything connecting it. So I just got a bunch of strings and tied all the ones that weren't making notes together to make it where it would do what it was supposed to do and make the note. And that's when I learned to pick songs out and learned to play by ear a little bit.
Right then. So did you play any other instruments?
Yes, so we went to St. Francis Xavier downtown, and they had a wonderful music department. I just love my music teacher. She was Sister Gabriella, a Sister of Divine Providence. And we had a beautiful music room up on upstairs, about 3rd floor. And they had a piano in there too, of course, because we played in the orchestra and we played, and I sang in the glee club. And they'd let us practice up there, but we did clean the music room every evening because the sister told us if we'd do that she would give us free music lessons. So that's the way we got to get our music lessons.
That's how you got
Sister
to learn.
Gabriella let us clean up the music room. But I was so happy when they would all leave and I wouldn't have anybody around me and I could get to that nice piano in there. And I learned to play the different chords. And for every note in the song, I could play a chord. And so all my songs went out with a note, with a little chord for every note. It wasn't anything like boo boo ba doo ba doo ba doo boo ba doo. It was doom 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 for every note in the song. But I learned to play, and I picked up some of the songs that we played in the orchestra. I learned to play some of those. I remember I learned to play the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and I just love playing it.
That's great. So what clubs were you in?
Well, we belonged to when I was in grammar school, they had the Holy Angel Society. And when I was in high school, we belonged to there was a society for the Sodality. It was for the Blessed Virgin Mary. Ladies of Sodality, Blessed Mary, Mother Sodality. I can't remember the exact name that we called her, but it was a Sodality, and we had white skirts and blue capes that we wore, and a little blue cap, and that was our Sodality. What we had when we had Sodality. We had to wear that. And we'd go to church at the cathedral, St. Francis Xavier.
So what are some of the places that you went to for fun?
Well, they had a lot of creeks and swimming places around there. Indian Creek, that was a fun place to go. And I remember one time we went to Indian Creek, and Mom and Daddy were all out there, and Rita had a friend with her. Well, it wasn't very wide. It wasn't any wider than this room, but in the middle it would get deep. But we could swim across it because it wasn't too far. So we'd swim back and forth. But in the middle, if you lost your breath or something, you could go under. It was pretty bad right there. And that happened to Rita and her friend. I guess one of them couldn't touch bottom or something, got scared, and was holding on to the other one. They were both going under, and they kept going under and coming up and going under, and I started screaming. I just started scuffing up and down and screaming as loud as I could, and some man heard me. He said, "There's something wrong down there," and he got up, and I know that he knew that they were in trouble by the way I was screaming and hollering, and he went down there and just walked through and pulled them up, and they were up over his head. He was on the water, but he knew that he could walk across because it was not that far, you know. So he walked them out of there. And then he turned around and said, "That little girl up there saved these girls' lives." But then we had another place we used to love to go. It was Indian Creek, not Indian Creek, that's the one I was telling you about. And then we had Magnolia Park. Beach of Magnolia Park was what they called it. We had Valentine Lake and Fishville. Fishville, Mother and Daddy used to bring out the big iron skillet and the potatoes, and Daddy'd bring his fishing pole. We never caught the fish, but we sure had some good fish fries.
So what kind of clothes did you wear? Did y'all make a lot of them, or?
Well, my grandmother ain't Ruby. She wasn't my aunt. She was my step-grandmother. And she made me a beautiful little skirt one year. It was just beautiful. And it fit so good I wanted to wear it every day. But I do remember that one thing I wore, but I don't know, we just wore it like everyday clothes, but that was special. That one dress, that one skirt meant a lot to me, and it was very special.
So how old were you when World War II started?
Well, I guess I was in about the sophomore in high school, and they had a lot of army camps around there and all, you know. And I went to work for an Army and Navy store, a little novelty store, where they sold gifts and hats and souvenirs and things like that. And that was my first job.
So you worked after school?
I worked after school and on weekends.
Did your brothers and sisters work?
Well, Rita worked out at Esler Field, but she's 2 years older than me. And so she was out of school at that time. She graduated, I graduated in 43 and she graduated in 41. And she had gone off to college. And she had come back and well, she didn't go for full time, she just went 1 year. And she went to work at Esler Field and she met her husband, Johnny. Well, she met her friend, Johnny Gabel. And they got engaged. And my daddy got transferred to Monroe. And so that was the year, by then, it was 1943. And Daddy moved to Monroe, and Mother stayed in Alexandria with me because I hadn't graduated yet. And when Rita stayed with a friend of hers because she wanted to stay and work and be with Johnny until they got married, and they were going to get married at the base. They were going to have a military wedding at Esler Field. So after I graduated, the day I graduated, my mother and I had two little brothers. I had one of my brothers was born when I was a junior in high school, and one of my brothers was born when I was a senior in high school. And so me and Edie and Judy and Billy and Butch went. That was 5 of us. By then we had 4 girls and 2 boys. And the 5 of us went to Monroe to live and join my daddy because he had gotten transferred with his job. And Rita stayed and lived with a friend of hers and worked and waited till the time they were supposed to get married. And so, but I mean, it wasn't too long. It was that summer after I graduated. But when we moved to Monroe, we came back for the wedding. And the day Johnny got married, Rita and Johnny got married, they told my daddy that he had gotten his orders to go overseas. But he talked to his superior officers, and they told him that he could have long enough to go on a little honeymoon, but that he would have to go to the port of deportation or whatever they call it. And that's when where they went before they shipped them overseas. And she was able to stay with him there maybe a week or 2, I don't know exactly how long. But when he left to go overseas, then she joined us in Monroe. And she came to live with us there for the duration until my daddy got transferred away from Monroe. But I went to school in Monroe. I went to a commercial college. I took a commercial college at a commercial course at a junior college, and then I took the civil service test and went to work out at Selmanville.
So that's where you worked in Monroe?
In Monroe, I worked at Selmanville.
Okay, so when the war ended, what happened? Did you get another job?
Well, before the war ended, my daddy was transferred to Baton Rouge. And so Rita and I stayed in Monroe to wait for us to get our civil service transfers. But Mother and Daddy and Judy and Edie and Billy and Butch moved to Baton Rouge. And they had found a little house out on Chairdale in University Gardens, and Rita and I stayed, and we just stayed there a few weeks until our civil service transfers came through, and then we went to Alexandria, and Rita and I both worked in Alexandria until our wartime appointments were expired, and Johnny came home from the war. And when Johnny came home from the war, Rita moved to Chicago to be with him. And I moved back to Alexandria because I didn't have a job. And later on, my daddy told me, he said, well, the only reason I let you go to Alexandria is because I knew you wouldn't be able to get a job, and I fooled him. I went to work for the telephone company as a junior draftsman and a clerk typist.
So who did you live with when you were in
I lived with my very best friend, Beverly Smith. But a very good friend of mine from Monroe moved to Baton Rouge, and her name was Orlis Hodges. And her brother and her mother moved to Baton Rouge so that her brother could go to LSU. And when they were in Baton Rouge, she met Milton Beatty. And Milton had a brother, and so she called me and told me that she wanted me to go out with Milton's brother. And so I told her I would, and he came and picked me up, and we went out to his sister's house for our first date. It was on Christmas Day, and we went out to his sister, the whole family. I mean, Milton and Orlis and Donna and I and his mother and daddy, and everybody was out at Marguerite's. And that was a blind date, and we went out there. His sister was Marguerite, and that's where we first met. It was on a blind date to go meet his, and I met his whole family.
On the first date.
And his brother was my friend's boyfriend.
So did you have a lot of boyfriends before you met Grandpa?
I had some boyfriends in Alexandria, and I dated a little few of the soldiers in Monroe. So I knew one flyer that was in navigation training. That was Monroe was a field where they trained pilots and navigators and bombardiers. And I met one of them that was a navigator. That when he got out, he was assigned to navigation, and I dated him a good bit, and he used to come out and have dinner with us and all in Monroe. And then when I typed up all of his forms, because I worked in the department where we classified everything, and I typed up his forms to go, and when I saw him to leave, because it was time for them to go on off and get ready for going to war. And so I knew when he said he was going to England Air Base in Alexandria that the boys that left out of there went to the B-17s, and they flew to straight overseas. That was a Porter deportation. And they went to England, and I knew he was going to England. And I got a few letters from him. But that's only real. Well, I had dated some other boys. I had a real good friend that I liked. Nicholas was Nicky, I called him, but I liked him a whole lot. He was an Italian, and his mother was a real good friend of Johnny Gabel's mother, and she used to send food, and Mama would cook it, and he'd come over and eat with us. And I really liked him. He was a lot of fun. So I had two friends up in Monroe, and then when I went to Alexandria, came back to Baton Rouge, and then moved to Alexandria when my job ran out. I had a wartime appointment, and I went to work for a telephone company. I met a boy. His name was Johnny, and he went to school over at the Baptist school in Pineville. It was a Baptist college, and he was real tall. He played basketball, and he always tried me to go over there and watch his ball games, but I didn't have too good transportation in those days. In fact, I had to walk most places, but I never did go watch him. But he was real nice, and I enjoyed knowing him. And then when I moved to Baton Rouge, when I went back to Baton Rouge, when my friend introduced me to well, I came back to Baton Rouge to get married, really. Mm-hmm. But Johnny brought me home. And he wanted me to go to Mardi Gras with him. And I told him, no, I couldn't go to Mardi Gras with him. I was going with Donald. And he sat at my house all day waiting for me to come home because he thought I would go back to Alexandria with him. And I told him no, that I had to go back for a little while to that Donald and Milton and Orlish were going to bring me home. So I had to break up with him, but he was really nice. I liked him a whole lot.
So your parents, they lived in Baton Rouge on Cherrydale? Is that...
Yeah, they lived on Cherrydale in University Gardens.
Now, did they always live there? Or did they
No,
move?
they sold that house and moved out to Maribel. They moved on Maribel Drive in Victoria Gardens.
So did they ever have any arguments or anything?
Oh, yeah. Well, one time I remember Daddy had work. He called Mother and told he wasn't going to be home early. He played cards a lot with somebody he used to work with, and they had real close friends down on the front porch on the Maribel Drive, and they were all down there. And I think Mother ended up going down there, but Daddy didn't come home for some reason or another. The Mother came home, and then Daddy was supposed to come home, but he stayed to play cards. And then the next day, he got home. Somebody brought him home. I don't know who it was. I guess it was the people that, his friends, the other friends, they were a bunch of people down there playing cards, and so some of them brought him home. No, they didn't bring him home. He was driving home, and he drove the car into a ditch, a big canal that was flooded. And when it floods, you know, it kind of goes over. And he went off into that ditch. And then somebody had to go get him and bring him home. And he never did tell Mama. And when his mama saw the picture in the paper, the next morning it was in the Advocate, or the State Times, whatever it was at that time. And the picture was in the, she said, Andrew, isn't that our car? And he just told, he said, Edris, if I'd have had another drink, I'd have made it all the way through. And Mama never could be mad at Daddy. And he never had an enemy, you know, he just loved everybody.
So when did you get married?
I got married in 1945. That was, we met on Christmas Day, Donna and I met on Christmas Day. And then we got married that July in St. Agnes Church. It was just a little church on a little hill at that time, but now they have a big church over there. But at that time it was just a small church. And we got married in 1945.
So did you...
No, it wasn't 45. We got married in 1947.
Mm. So did you start having kids right away?
Oh yeah. Donna Ann was born, and we got married in 1947. Donna Ann was born in July 1947. Donna Ann was born in September 1948, and then they were about a year apart. Donna Ann, Nancy, Bubba, Jeannie, Alan, Cathy, Donnie, and Connie. We had a little girl, Connie.
So where did Grandpa work when you were first married?
Well, Donald worked over at Bill Ledette's, and that was a place where he worked on, well, he didn't work at Bill's first, he worked at the Chevrolet Company first, and then he went to work for Bill Ledette, and he was a mechanic, and Bill sent him to a lot of schools, and he learned a whole lot working for Bill, a lot on tune-ups and different carburetors and things. He'd go to all these schools, and he was really learning a lot working for Bill Ledette. And then he had a chance to go. He heard that they were starting an apprenticeship program at Standard Oil. At that time, it was Standard Oil, and he went and applied for it, and he had to take a physical. And he has real bad trouble with his knees. He was double jointed. And he told that doctor that he needed that job, and he wanted it real bad, and he knew he could do the work. And so the doctor gave him a clean bill of health, and Standard Oil hired him, and he went to work for an apprenticeship program, and I think that was 4 years doing that. But it was always a very good job for him, but the hours weren't all that good, but that was a good job for him.
So with all the kids you had, did you have much of a social life?
Well, we mostly just stayed home with the children. I didn't know too many people there, But we did go to a few dances with the different clubs. His sister Marguerite, where we'd gone the first day, on our first date, she belonged to a dance club, and we got to go to some of those dances with them. And those are some of the things we did, you know, get to go to some of the dance club dances. But we didn't do too much. The children, and we did like to enjoy being home with the children. We had television at that time, and I can remember we'd watch Lucy and all the fun shows, you know. And all the children went to swimming lessons. We enrolled them in swimming lessons, and they went through the first stage, and then they went through the intermediate, and they all passed intermediate. And they were about the only ones there to get the certificate for intermediate, and I was real proud of them. They could do all the strokes, and I was real proud of them. And we enjoyed going to Godchall's and watching going out and riding around, seeing the Christmas lights. And we always enjoy the holidays, Christmas and Thanksgiving, Halloween. Donna used to take all the kids out on Halloween. He'd go blocks and blocks with them. I'd stay home, and he'd go out and take all the kids out. They could dress in their little costumes, and it was always a special time for them.
So why don't you tell me all about each one of your kids?
Well, Donna is the oldest. She was born on September the 23rd. It's her birthday. And she went to Broadmoor High School, and she enjoyed going sewing. She went to home ec. She enjoyed her home ec class, and she really had a good home ec teacher, and she sang in the Broadmoor choir. And then when she got out of school, she went to work in Gonzales at some pants factory, I think. But the work wasn't regular. They'd on a while, off a while. And she had a little apartment over there, and I never will forget how proud I was of her to be able to have her own little apartment. But it was a very run-down place, and Donna was very happy when she came home. But she just couldn't make it because they didn't work all the time. They'd be off for weeks. So she came home, and she started a babysitting job. And she would go and pick up the children and take them to school and go back and get them. And if they needed to go to the doctor, she'd go to school and take them to the doctor. And if the children got sick at school, they'd call Donna. And if she needed to call the parents, well, if they couldn't, say they had a little fever or something, they couldn't stay at school, Donna would go get them. And if she could keep them at home, she would. But if she couldn't, she'd call the parents and say, well, you know, she'd tell them what was wrong with their child, and if the parent had to come get the child, she would. But otherwise, Donna Ann would stay with them. And she would take them to their music lessons and their swimming lessons. She belonged to, these people that she babysit for belonged to country clubs and all, and she'd get to go to all the country clubs, and they had signed the papers for them to have lunch and all, and so she was having a pretty good time over there for a while. But she had a stroke when she was 51 years old. She bought a car and she bought a trailer, and she had a stroke, and then she couldn't do anything anymore. And she was able to get disability and her SSI and Medicaid and Medicare. And she's in a very nice Catholic Presbyterian apartments. And she likes it up there a whole lot.
Well, what was Great Aunt Donna like when she was a baby?
Well, she was a beautiful baby, but when she was first born, she cried a whole lot. She cried all the time. We didn't have a pediatrician. We just used our regular MD doctor. And he had on a formula that wasn't proper for a little infant. So after several months, we took her to a pediatrician, and he said that she had the wrong formula, that she had way too much cortose. And so he gave us a formula that we used with every one of the other babies. Every one of them had the same formula. 17, 13, 2. 17 water, 13 milk, canned milk, and 2 Cortos tablespoons. So she got over that after she got her formula straight and all. She quit crying, and she was beautiful. We lived in the Delmont Apartments. At that time, that was out by St. Gerard's off of Plank Road. And I'd take her out every afternoon. I'd wash her hair and roll it up, and she had beautiful blonde hair with a little reddish tint to it. And I'd put a little organdy dress on her, and we'd go outside and sit on the bench and just sit and talk. I mean, she would play around, but mostly just sit because she wasn't very old. And some of the neighbors sometimes would come out, and just say hello. And then I'd rock, I'd sing to them all the time. And I just loved to rock and sing to the babies,
So what was one of the songs that you sang to them?
Oh, my favorite one was, have you ever gone across the sea to Ireland? And da 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 da. And watch the moon go down on Galway Bay. And I loved it. I'd sing it over and over and over, and I said, I know these kids all don't know that. I can't even remember the words anymore.
Well, it sounds really pretty.
But I used to love to sing it to them. And of course I'd sing Rockabye Baby and all the little quack quack little duck songs and all the little baby songs.
So what about Aunt Nancy? Was she next?
Yes, Nancy was beautiful. Nancy was a beautiful baby. We were decorating. She was born on December the 17th. And we had a little house out in Fairfields, just a little stucco block house that had a bedroom and a living room and a kitchen and a bath. And we had we had Nancy, we had Donna, so we had one of the bedrooms was for the baby beds. And then Dolly and I used the living room for our bed, and we didn't have a living room. But I remember we put up a little tree. It was on a stand of some kind. And I remember going to bed and thinking, oh, what a beautiful little Christmas tree. And I just felt so happy. And then pretty soon, uh-oh, and I told Donald, I said, Donald, we got to go to the hospital. So we got Donna in, bundled up and everything, and we went to get in the car, and we got in the car, and I kept telling him, I said, Donald, the baby's coming. I know it's coming. And so he kept going, and we hit a car. A car came out and kind of came out in front of us, and he snapped it. I said, Donald, we can't stop. I said, if you stop, we're going to have the baby right here. So he just kept on going, got into the hospital, put me in a chair, a wheelchair, wheeled me up, he knew where it was, wheeled me up to delivery, and the nurses got hold to me and they said, oh, they took me right to the delivery room, and she was born. Just made it. And she was born on December the 17th. And she was beautiful. I just thought she was the prettiest little baby I ever saw. Just the opposite from Donna. Donna Ann had the beautiful gold blonde hair, and she had the prettiest little head of black hair you ever saw. And she was beautiful, all her features, and she was plump. And Donna Ann was tall, and I could tell she was longer, and her legs were lanky, and her hands. But she was a beautiful baby, but so different. This was just like a little plump baby, with all that black hair. And I just thought she was the cutest little bundle of joy I'd ever seen.
So was she a real quiet baby?
She was very, very quiet. She had her little bed in my room. Donna Ann had I guess she must have had a baby bed in another room. But Nancy had her bed in my room. And in Donna and I's room. And I put it right by the window because I had to spend so much of the time with Donna because she wanted to be read to all the time. And I can remember opening up the books and reading Dog. And she'd want Dog, I'd say the word, and she'd say the word, and we'd get to Humpty Dumpty. She'd say, uh-oh. But Nancy stayed in her bed a lot. She learned to walk in her bed. But Donna came home for dinner every day, and I'd cook. I mean, she ate meals like beans and rice and spinach and chicken stew and everything, and meatloaf, spaghetti, everything. But she had to have about three cans of prunes a day. I couldn't keep her from getting constipated. But she really did eat. She ate a lot, and she was just a beautiful. Everything I tried to do was just, everything was just perfect. She was just a perfect baby, but I felt like I wasn't giving her enough quality time one-on-one, because I'd go in and change her. I'd go in and give her a bottle. I'd go in and bring her out to dinner, bathe her, change her clothes. And she was in her bed, and then I was out there reading to Donna, taking her out on, but it was right outside, right out the door. But Nancy didn't get, I always felt like Nancy didn't get enough of quality time. Every time I'd pick her up and get in the car and take her somewhere, her head would go right down there. She'd just go right under there. And I remember they used to have ice cream place, hoppers, and they make the thickest ice cream sodas, like, malts, I guess you'd call them. And I did a little bit in a straw, and just so she could get a little bit, and I'd give Nancy a little bit, and I let it drop off of there. I looked down there, and she had eaten almost a half of one of those malts. She was just a little infant, but she could really eat. But I had a lot of fun with her. She was beautiful, but I just felt bad that and then she was still a baby when you were ready to go to...
Sure, keep going.
So then Bubba came. Well, Nancy, she was just real quiet and a real good baby, and a beautiful baby, very good. And she looked so cute in all of her clothes and everything. But it wasn't... Nancy was born December the 17th, and then Bubba was born before December the 17th came around again. So they were born the same before 12 months, And Nancy didn't want to give him a bottle a bit. She wanted that bottle. Every time that Bubba got a bottle, that was her bottle. And I had the hardest time getting her off of the bottle, because I had to give Bubba the bottle. And she liked the bottle anyway. So I just had a hard time getting off of it. And one time we were driving in the car going somewhere. And Nancy and Bubba, they were both still, Bubba wasn't off the bottle yet. He must have been about a year old, because after they were a year old, they got off the bottle. But Nancy wasn't even 2 yet, you see. And she was off the bottle, but I had a hard time getting her off of it, because Bubba had his. So I had given Bubba his bottle, and she picked that bottle up and hit him over the head with it, and it broke into a million pieces. So poor Bubba, but he got off the bottle pretty soon after that, and so we didn't have that. They were both got off about the same time, I guess you could say. But Bubba was a beautiful baby.
So how about Aunt Nancy as she got older?
Oh, Aunt Nancy, after she got older, she went to, she worked at Godshaw's. Mm-hmm. And she met Christopher Velardo over there. But she was still in high school when she met him. And she went to St. Joseph's Academy and graduated from St. Joseph's. And then she went out to LSU and got a degree in home ec, but it was in child care, family planning, I believe. And then she went she married Chris. She and Chris got married after they dated 6 years. But they met at Godshaw's when they worked at Godshaw's, and they dated 6 years. And then when they got married, she moved to New Orleans, because Chris was over there working on his master's. And Nancy went to the University of New Orleans and got certified in teaching. And she was like a second, first, early grade teaching. And they told her to go back to school and get a degree in teaching disabled children, or children that were hard to learn. And so she did that, and she went to, she did do that. I forgot where she went back and did that, but she did. And then after that, she went to Hammond, and she got another degree in pre-K learning disability or something. And I don't know what all her degrees were. They were all different. But she got her master's over at Hammond, and then she's working now on teaching pre-K disabled children. And I don't think you'd even say it's pre-K. It's like from 1 to 2 years old. No, disabled children. And Chris is working. He got his degree. He went for his doctorate, but he didn't get his doctorate. But he has a certain title that qualifies him right under that what he was looking for. He's a very qualified clinical social worker, and it qualifies him to have his own business. You know, he has his own business, and he does a lot of work with children, troubled children, and he works a lot of work with the lawyers and does a lot of research work. And they have 3 children, Paul and Wendy and Brian, and they're all Paul and Wendy are graduated from college, and Brian is working on his master's now. Yeah. And Paul's married, but he's the only one married. And Wendy's working in Georgia. And so I go to Bubba.
Yeah.
Well, Bubba was a beautiful baby. He was my little boy, and just beautiful baby. Good. Just everything about Bubba was good. And but he got chapped, and I felt so bad because he would get chapped. And I learned that you could use Desotax or something, and he lived with the caked in Desotax, Desotax, whatever it was. But he was a beautiful baby, and he walked right away and never gave me any trouble. He just knew what to do and knew what to say, very polite, and everybody loved Bubba. He always had a lot of friends, and he played football and baseball. He went swimming a lot. He loved the water. He went swimming a lot, and he graduated from Catholic High, and then he went out to LSU, and he got his degree from LSU, his BS, and then he went to work for Hibernia, with Fidelity at that time, Fidelity Bank out in Baker. He was manager of that bank, and he married his high school sweetheart. And that marriage was he was married to Anna Marie for 10 years, and that marriage didn't produce any children, and it just didn't work out. They didn't have the same needs in life, and it was annulled. And then he married a girl that worked at the bank at Fidelity with him, and her name was Lisa Beatty. And Lisa they have one little boy now, big boy, Adam. He's at Calicut now, and is so proud to be over there doing the same things his daddy did. His daddy loved to play baseball and football. He was on the Calicut football team, and Adam is following right in his daddy's footsteps. He loves to do everything, and Lisa is the manager of the Hibernia Bank. It's a branch bank right here in Baton Rouge, and Bubba's a loan officer at the Hancock Bank out in Baker. His office is out in Baker. And they bought a camp out at Lake Rosemount. It was Jeannie's project. She first started it. But when she got married and moved away, Bubba and Lisa bought their camp at Lake Rosemount, and they just love it out there. They all enjoy skiing and water skiing and fishing and just going out there every chance they get. We all love it.
Oh, yeah.
And after Bubba was Jeannie. Jeannie was, she was a beautiful little baby, but she looked so much like Nancy that when they were walking around, Nancy was little and Jeannie was a little taller. Till one time they got the same age, the same height, and they looked just alike from the back. I couldn't tell them apart. They both had long black hair, and so they looked so much alike. But Jeannie got taller than Nancy. After a while, she grew up and got taller than Nancy. But she was very active. She loved doing swimming lessons like everybody else, and she loved going to the CYO. They had the CYO activities at that time, and she loved going over there, going to the little socials and everything. She was a brunette when she was in school, but when she was young, she just kind of got lost by that time, lost in the group. There were so many of them by that time. Jeannie was the fourth one. And but she was real good. You know, she was taller than the others. I knew from the beginning that she was going to be tall. She loves people, and she loved being with people, and she got along very well with everybody. And she went to St. Joseph's Academy too. She graduated from St. Joseph's Academy, and then she went to Baton Rouge Trade School. She went to LSU for a while, but she decided she wanted to go to Baton Rouge Trade School. So she went to the Baton Rouge Trade School and took a commercial course and went to work for Gulf States. And she dated this one boy for a long, long time, and he went to the service, and they wrote letters and everything, and she really liked him a whole lot, but he met another girl. And it broke her heart, but she, for a while, and but she went out with some girls that she knew from Gulf States, and she met David Galster, and they started dating, and then they ended up getting married. And he worked for he's a mechanical engineer, and he had graduated from LSU, and he worked here in Baton Rouge for a while, but he didn't get along too good here. He wanted to get out of Baton Rouge. They had a bad flood, and everything they owned, they lost: the car, the bed, everything. The nice furniture. She had gotten a lot of real nice furniture, and they lost it all. Well, he just wanted to move. He didn't want to live around here. So he got a job in Iowa. And they moved up to Iowa, and so that's when Lisa and Bubba bought their camp, because they couldn't pay the insurance on it. It was hard for them to pay the insurance on it. And so Bubba and Lisa ended up with their camp. But he loves it up there in Iowa. He wouldn't be anywhere else. They've tried, even Exxon called him back. He had worked for Exxon for a while, and he wouldn't come back, but he never did tell Jeannie till a long time later that he turned that down. And they've asked him to move to Clinton, where he is now. Had told him they thought it would be good if he could move to Houston, because he goes to Houston a lot on his job. And he told him he didn't want to move to Houston. He just didn't want to. And so they still in Clinton. DeWitt now. They bought a beautiful home in DeWitt. I love it. It's right in the middle of the cornfields. They have a nice big lot, but it's very, very nice for them. And he still works for the same company, and he loves it. the children have grown up there now. They went to school in Clinton, and they love it. They love Clinton, and she's adjusted to it, and I don't think she would take her children away from there now because it's their home, you know. Their oldest son is Eric, and he's in the service. He was in Afghanistan with the 10th Army, 10th Mountain Division. And Kirk is in high school. He's a junior in high school. He's just started dating. He's dating Eric's girlfriend's girlfriend. And Jennifer is it's her first year of high school, I believe. Yes, her first year of high school. And they're doing real well over there. They're all very happy over there. And that's what they're doing right now. And then Alan is a bachelor. Alan is a bachelor. And he just, I don't know, I don't think, he's just so blunt with everything and so frank with everything. I just don't think any girl would put up with him. But I guess if it ever meet the right person, that would change. But so far, he's just established bachelor. But he was so cute when he was little because he was so little. And he came, we just have so many things that we remember about Alan because he was always doing and saying things. And I remember one time we had cooked and barbecued all day long and eaten all day long. And he came up to me when it was time to go to bed. He said, "Mama, I can't go to bed yet." I said, "Well, why?" He said, "Because I didn't have my breakfast yet." So we remember those kind of remarks. And then he had a little dog called Curly. And Curly, Butchie, my brother, came over one day, and he was babysitting with them. And it was time for Adam to go to bed, and Butchie walked in there, and Curly was in the bed with him. And he said, "Alan, does that dog have fleas?" And Adam looked up and grinned. He said, "Not very many." So Butchie still teased him about that. And one time we went on a family picnic out at a big plantation house around St. Francisville. I think it's Oak Alley. Is that the?
Yeah, I think that's out there.
Is that the one out at St. Francisville? And we were all out there. We brought a picnic lunch, and we were eating and fooling around. And he was rolling down the hills, and he was so little that he'd just roll down the hills, and he'd tell Aunt Edie, "Look, I are dangerous, Aunt Edie." And so she got to call him more dangerous. And to this day, she calls him more dangerous. So he always had so many cute things, you know. One Christmas, he loved Christmas, and we had a big Christmas tree that year, and he found his paw under the Christmas tree, and he looked up and he said, "And I thought I'd been bad." He couldn't believe he got so many presents. So we have a lot of funny things that we tell on Alan, but he went to LSU too. He took music, and he played the saxophone in Baltimore. He graduated from Baltimore. He played the saxophone in the band over there, and he loved to do everything the others did. He liked boating and skiing and swimming and playing. He played baseball when he was younger. After he got older, he went into music. And then he went to LSU and got his degree in music performance. And then after that, he went to work as a machinist, and he decided he wanted to go back to school, so he went back to LSU and got his degree in industrial engineering. And so far he hasn't been able to get a job for that, but he's still taking courses and improving, you know, trying to learn more about different courses that he just wants to, math courses and things. So he's still doing that, but he's still working as a machinist. But he has a trailer, and we go he takes us out to Yogi Bear a lot. That's the camp the kids like to go to. And then after that, it was Connie. Connie was born. She was a beautiful baby. She was just beautiful. And I just wanted to sit and hold her and sing to her all the time. But I had a chemical imbalance after she was born, and I couldn't sleep, and my blood pressure was going away with me. And I was on a real strong tranquilizer that was supposed to make you sleep, but I didn't even sleep through it. I never did sleep. Even with that, I couldn't sleep. So she got a hold of those pills, and that same day she died in the hospital. But she was so cute. She was just a beautiful baby. And I remember one time I had gone off to the grocery store, and she had left her with Donald, and she wanted to help. So Donald let her, she just had on her little diaper, and Donald let her get up underneath the car with him. He gave her 2 little tubes, and when I come home, she was black from head to toe with black grease, just grinning all over the place under there, doing her 2 little tubes, helping her daddy. And oh my goodness. But she was just a precious baby. But she's buried in Roselawn Cemetery over there where the Beatty plot is. And Dolly and I wanted to be buried there, so we bought our plot down from them. But we didn't want to move her because we decided to leave her where she was and just get as close to her as we could. So that's what we did. And I remember another time, Donald told me when she died that Father Marino had said it would be good if she could have gotten confirmed before she died. And I've always thought of that because one time when she was just a baby, we taught her to say Jesus. We'd show her the picture of the Sacred Heart and say Jesus. And she knew Jesus, she'd say Jesus. And then one time when I was rocking her and the picture was in the back, and I was always rocking, singing to him. And she just started kissing me all over my face, all over the place. She said, Jesus. Jesus, kept pointing to Jesus. So I said she made her own confirmation. I really do believe she did. She had confirmed that she loved Jesus. And she knew Jesus. So she was reborn before she died. And I believe that. And that's about her little life was short. But she was a beautiful little baby. Beautiful. She had a kidney problem and a heart problem. And she, one of my sister-in-laws, that's a nurse, said she had a real hard time with her kidneys because she had such a narrow little passageway that she would have they had to stretch it all the time, and it caused her to have a heart problem too, I believe. But that's what they said, she was her heart that killed her. That she had gotten all the stuff out of her, but that her heart had killed her. She just couldn't live through it. But then after Connie was born, Cathy was born. Cathy, we named Cathy Bernadette Beatty. And Alan's name was Alan Alphonsus Joseph Beatty. He had a long name. Bubba's name was Bubba Rock Beatty. But they all had, and I just love Catherine Bernadette. I love the name Bernadette. And she was a beautiful little baby too. Her hair just stood straight on the back of her head. And pretty soon when they got older, I couldn't tell she had Jeannie or Nancy apart. They all looked alike from the back. And she was cute as she could be. And I can't remember too much about it. We moved around so much when she was little. Donna got laid off from Exxon, and we had to move to Beaumont. And I remember we bought her a little truck of some kind, And I thought, oh gosh, I bet she's not even going to be able to use it. But the little boy next door had one, and I wanted her to have one. So that's what we gave her for Christmas. And she got in that little truck and took off. She took off. She just went right down the walk, turned, and went down the sidewalk. And oh gosh, I'm so glad she can use it. I wanted her to be able to use it because the little boy looked like he enjoyed it so much, but he didn't have anything over on her. She just took off in her little car. And Cathy loved to ski. She just loved to ski. And she went to Broadmoor High School. She went to Our Lady of Mercy for a while. And then she was transferred when we moved out in St. Thomas More Parish. We had lived in Our Lady of Mercy Parish. And when we moved out to St. Thomas More Parish, she went to St. Thomas More, but she had a wonderful teacher. They got along very good, and then her teacher left in the middle of the year. And Cathy never did seem to be able to do as well after her teacher left like that, because she got along so well with her, and she just didn't catch on with this other teacher in the middle of the year like that. It was an awful thing for her. And so then we took her out of that school, and we brought her over to what's the name of the school right over there where Aunt Rita taught? Audubon Elementary. But when she was at St. Thomas More, they had a storm go through there, a tornado. And Nancy was teaching over there at that time. And Donna and Cathy were both there. And Cathy saw the storm coming, and she ran to the somewhere room, a little storage room, and jumped in there, and she said everybody piled in on top of her. But their room got hit, Nancy's room got hit, and the church got hit, and Donnie was in the church. But they were all okay. But they witnessed that. The Cathy saw the storm coming and everything blowing all over the place. Cathy saw it all coming. But they did okay. And then she went over to Audubon Elementary. She joined the Girl Scouts, and she was terrific. She just did everything that, she was terrific with the Girl Scouts, everything she did. And she loved to ski. She was a wonderful water skier. And she graduated from Broadmoor High School. And she had a lot of friends around the block, and all the neighborhood kids, and they all got together and just had a lot of fun all the time. And she went to work for Wilson's. And when she was at Wilson's, she met Kerry Jenkins. And they went on, it was time for her to graduate and all, and they went on their senior trip, and Kenny came with them. Well, he didn't go with them, but he went to where they were. He went to the same place they went. She called me every day. Mama, I think he likes me. Mama, I met this cute boy, and I think he likes me. And well, I had met him, and I didn't know too much about him, but I knew that Cathy did. She was so excited when he liked her. Till it wasn't too much long after that Cathy was, she had gone to LSU, and I think Kenny had gone out there a little while too. But she was a junior in high school when she and Kenny got married. And they got married at an evening candlelight service at St. Thomas More Church. It was beautiful. And they had the reception at a Casey Hall at St. Aloysius Casey Hall. And we had the little lamp, the little tea lights or whatever, all out in the yard. And it was really nice. It was beautiful. It was prettier outside than it was inside. But it was nice. And it was a beautiful wedding, candlelight service. And then Kenny went to work with the contractors as a electrician tech or something, I don't really know. And then he went to work after that with BASF, and he's been at BASF about Oh gosh, a good while now. How old are you, Kerry?
I'm 22.
Well, it must have been at least 20 years. He's been there a long time. And maybe not quite, but he's getting close. And he's still in the instrument technician department and doing that. And Cathy is, she never did finish school. She never did get her degree from college. But she works, works at a preschool nursery at St. Andrew's Church. And she enjoys her work. She loves it. And she takes care of a little boy. His name is Brett. And he comes over every day, and she takes care of him and takes him to school and goes to get him, and then his parents pick him up in the afternoon. And they had 3 children. Kerry, the oldest one, and she's out at LSU. She'll be graduating pretty soon. And I don't think Kerry quite knows yet what she wants to go into. She likes everything, but she has a beautiful voice. She loves music. And she works at LSU. She has a job on campus, and she loves her job. She loves working with the computers, but I don't know. She's in computer tech of some kind right now, but she loves English, and she loves that part of her. She's musical. She loves English. She loves the arts. And I think she might end up being an English teacher, but she says she don't want to teach little children. She's going to be a professor. She teaches. Well, Kerry was a real pretty little girl when she was born. She's real sweet. She was the oldest of the children, and of Cathy and Kenny's children. She went to school at Most Blessed Sacrament, and when she was in grade school, she was a cheerleader in grade school. She has a pretty voice. She did the music she cantored at the school children's masses, and she's graduated from grammar school with honors from Most Blessed Sacrament, and then she went to St. Joseph's Academy. When she went to St. Joseph's Academy and for her orientation, the choir was there, and she decided she wanted to go to St. Thomas More. She loved that. St. Joseph's Academy. She loved that choir, and she did join the choir. And the person that lived right next to her was her best friend, and they're still best friends. And they're both at LSU now. She's going to graduate in a few months, and she's studying computer, some sort of computer tech, and I don't know exactly what it is, but she works at LSU. She works in computing, programming, and I don't know if it's programming. I know she makes web pages and keeps that information up. And she loves English, and she loves the arts and music, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if she didn't end up being an English professor. But she doesn't want to teach children, so she'll teach in the universities. And she's a 5-star person, and I know everything's going to be tops with her. And Ryan and Corey went to Most Blessed Sacrament too. They played soccer. They loved soccer, and they did the Cajun dancing, and Kerry did too. They loved the Cajun music, and I did too, and we all enjoyed it very much. And Ryan is he graduated from Redemptorist High School. He played football. The first year he was over there, he played. He was kicker for the varsity team, and they called him Morocco, because somebody said, where did he come from? Because he was hitting everything. He was hitting the ball right where the coach told him to hit it, and he was making all the extra points. One night they made 9 touchdowns, and he made every point for the extra point. and he was their cook that year. And he worked on computers. That's his main thing in life right now. He works on computers. He repairs them. He builds them, and he sells them at Comp USA. And he graduated from Redemptorist High School, and he has a girlfriend, and her name is Katie, real pretty girl, and everything seems to be going his way right now. We wish him the best of everything. They love to water ski, and they love to have a boat. They have a boat. They go out skiing in the boat, and they go out to all the different camps around Baton Rouge, and they go skiing up in Colorado. They love to ski, and usually they take their friends with them. This year they had 23 of them up there in Colorado, and they all had the little hats that Cathy made them to keep them warm. They were all orange, bright color, and very pretty and very comfortable, and they were all glad to have them. And she had 23 of them up there with her this year, and they all love to go. And then Corey, he plays soccer, but he has a little trouble with his back. He's he still plays soccer though, and he can do some things, but I think they watch him closer than they did the others because of his back. But he went to Most Blessed Sacrament, and he's a sophomore at a Redemptorist this year, and he's going to do very well. And he's working. He's got him a part-time job at one of the theaters in town. So they've all taken driver's ed. They all have their own transportation, and everything's working out very well for that family. And then after Cathy was Donnie. His name is Donald Gerard Beatty, and he was born in September. And he's the only one of the children that went into the service. He went to boot camp at Camp Pendleton, and he's a Marine. He was a Marine, and he came back to home after his boot camp training and getting his MOS, and he stayed in the reserves for 4 years. But he went to school at Audubon Elementary, and then he went to Sherwood Forest Junior High and Broadmoor High. He graduated from Broadmoor High and joined the Marines when he was a senior in high school, and he's proud to be a Marine, and we're proud of him. And he married Amy Furu from Plaquemine. She's a school teacher, and they have 3 children: Bart, Margaret, and Joseph. And Bart he loves to play the trombone, and they're trying to get a band started over at his school. They go to St. John in Plaquemine, and he's been going to that school since he started school, and they did work up a little band over there, and I hope it continues because I think Bart would like it. And he's a Boy Scout, and he goes on the weekend campouts and all, and they enjoy that. And Margaret is, she goes to St. John too. They make good grades. They all make real good grades, and so far they get the Apple Award and everything over there. But she tastes dancing. She loves dancing, and she's taken after her 2 cousins, Wendy and Kerry. They both danced, and they're wonderful dancers, and they put on some real fine shows at 2M's. And now Margaret's falling into their footsteps, and she's enjoying her dancing very much. And she plays the flute. I believe she plays the flute, and no, she plays clarinet in the band. And Joseph is just starting pre-K now, and I think he'll be in kindergarten, or maybe he's in kindergarten this year. The time goes so fast, I can't keep up with him. but he goes to St. John too, and I asked Donnie how he's doing. He said he must be doing all right. He's getting all S's. So we're real proud of all of them, and that's my children. That's all of my family.
Well, now that you talked about everybody in the family, what kind of stuff did y'all do when everybody was young? What church did you go to?
Well, when everybody was young, we went to Our Lady of Mercy. That's where the children all grew up, from Our Lady of Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Then Donald got laid off, and we went to our churches in Beaumont and Lake Charles. And but I think it was Bubba made his confirmation in Lake Charles.
So y'all moved around a whole lot?
Yeah, we moved around a lot. Mm-hmm.
So what about in more recent years, after your children all grew up? You still did a lot with music in a bunch of different clubs?
Yes, I joined the St. Thomas More Choir, and I joined Padre Pio Prayer Group and the Catholic Daughters and the Casey Auxiliary. And I was there a Mardi Gras Queen one year, but I'm not very active in those organizations, but I do pay my dues and try to do what I can and go when I can. And I was a Eucharistic minister for St. Thomas More Church, and for 6 years, and I went to bring communion to the patients over at Our Lady of the Lake Hospital for about 3 years. I'd go every Saturday morning, and I'd visit the sick, and sometimes in my parish I would bring communion to the sick until I got sick myself, and then I couldn't do it anymore. But I do enjoy music. I still enjoy music. I love to go to musicals and to the operas at LSU when I can. I used to belong to those programs, used to have season tickets, but Donald didn't like it, so he would go to sleep and snore. So I went a few years, and then I decided that maybe we better do something else. So I think that's about. I belong to Exxon Newarton Club for Delise. So I belong to several different things now. So not like it used to be when all the kids were little.
So did y'all go on a lot of vacations and stuff?
Yes, we bought a trailer. We bought a holiday rambler and a club wagon that had a 12-passenger club wagon. And we just had some wonderful trips. We went all over the United States. And one year we went up to Alaska. And we went all up through Nova Scotia, Washington. We started Washington, D.C., and went up through Acadia National Park in Nova Scotia. Came back down through Montreal in Canada, and went over through the southern part of Canada, over into Michigan, and went up in Michigan to the northern part of Michigan, and came down in the northern part of Wisconsin, and met my daughter over in Wisconsin, and she came and met us there from DeWitt, Iowa, and we spent a little time at a campground with them, and then we went on to North Dakota and South Dakota, and down into the Tetons and Yellowstone Park. And then we went up through Montana and to Glacier Park, and went up to Edmonton and caught the Alaskan Highway. And we went on the Alaskan Highway all the way to Whitehorse, and then we went over Whitehorse, and then we went up to Fairbanks and Anchorage. And then we went over to the coast, and Donald did some salmon fishing, and we caught 2 big salmon, and we froze them right there, and brought that was a children's souvenir when we got home. We somebody taught me how to cook them, and we barbecued them, and we all enjoyed the salmon. That was our souvenir to bring home to the kids. And then we came back down through the southern part of Canada and went to Winter Park and Victoria and Vancouver, crossed over into Victoria and went to all the beautiful gardens and the hotel and had high tea and all. It was a beautiful, beautiful part of our trip. The flowers were beautiful. And then we came back down through California, and we came back across to Colorado because our son was going to meet us. Alan was going to meet us. He's taken flying lessons, and he wanted to learn to fly up in the mountains at Pikes Peak and all. So he met us in Colorado, and he did take his flying lessons. He went out every day with an instructor, and it was so different. He said it's more like a glider. The wind just takes you where it wants you to go, and you just follow the wind and the way the wind's going to fly through the mountains. And he learned to do that, and he enjoyed it very much. And then he went on home because he had to get back home. And Donna and I went through Oklahoma, and then we went through, back down through Texas, and went to Toledo Bend. We stopped off at Toledo Bend and did some camping over in Texas too. That part of Texas, like some of the places had, we were using coast to coast campgrounds, and we found a couple of them down over there in Texas, and we stayed there. And we stopped at the Pendleton Bridge and fished a little, and stopped at that campground. And then it was time to come home. We had to come on home. But I believe we did stop one more time at Indian Creek, and we just stopped there to end our trip, and then we came on home to Baton Rouge. But the thing I remember about getting home that was sad was my little dog. I had left him with my son. Donnie was taking care of our bills while we were gone, and he had taken care of my little dog Mancho. And Mancho stood in the den, and I can still see him looking up at me and tears just rolling down his eyes. He just shed tears. And I'd never seen anything like that before, and I hadn't realized how hard it was for him, for us to be away. But that was a wonderful trip, and we've gone down to the Florida Keys. We've gone to Orlando and over into Disney World, and we brought Cathy and her family with us. We brought Nancy and her family, and Diane came with us several times. And we asked Corey one time what was his favorite part about going to Orlando, and he said, oh, that was when we swung off the tree swing over at one of the parks we stopped at on the way over there. So that was his favorite part. But he had chicken pox, and he had to get rid of his chicken pox before he could have too good a time. But I don't think he missed very much. We all had a wonderful time, and we just camped all over the place.
You went on a trip to England too, didn't you?
Oh yes, my brother-in-law, Rita's husband, was having his 50th anniversary of the D-Day, and we went, and he was invited out to come with his the Chitniks, I think they call it, and his Prince Charles was when his uncle got killed. Prince Charles was put in charge of that unit, and they were all invited over, and we had tea with Prince Charles at one of the air bases. Had a big white tent up, and he came over and spoke to Johnny's party, and shook hands with them, and we took some pictures, and it was a very, very special time because it was the Queen's birthday, and we got to see all the festivities and the changing of the guard and the beautiful parade they always have for the Queen's birthday. And it was just beautiful. And from there we went on to Ireland, and we ended up in Ireland on that trip and caught up with the Cobus bus tour, and we toured all of Ireland. It was a beautiful trip.
That sounds good.
It was very good, a beautiful time.
So, I guess tell me a little bit about Grandpa. What did you do after Grandpa passed away?
Well, after he died, it was hard for me because he had always done everything, and I had never been without him. We kind of grew up together, really, and I had never been without him, and he always took care of all the bills and everything. So I missed him an awful lot. But I was surprised that I was able to manage and to keep this house and to pay the bills and to be able to carry on. But they have a support group over at St. Thomas More, and I joined that, and joined several support groups where we meet and have meetings, little gatherings, and we support one another. We've got grief and our loneliness and our spirituality. We help one another with our spiritual life and our companionships, and we pray for our sick, and we always pray for one another when we're sick, and we always remember the ones that have died, and it brings us all together because we have a bond because we've all lost our spouse.
Well, how about your parents?
Well, my parents were Edris George Gipson and Andrew Henry Gipson, and they were both from the Rush clan that came from Ireland. My daddy was the son of William Gipson, and his daddy had married a Posey, and I don't know what their names was. I have a list of them, but right now I don't remember, but I do know that he married one Posey girl, and she died, and then he married her sister, and they had William, and then William had Andrew, and then Andrew had me. But that I can't remember his name, but I believe it was Gerard or something like that. And I can't remember the Posey girl's name, but I think one of them was Cathy, because I have an Aunt Cathy, and I think she was named after one of those girls. And my mother was the daughter of Tom George, who was the son of Mary Ann George, who was the son of he was the son of Mary Ann George, and Mary Ann was the daughter of Daniel and Elizabeth Rush from Ireland, and they had big farms. My mother was from Philadelphia, Mississippi, and Daniel had a lot of property, and they had cotton farms, and he ended up giving all of the children, granting them land all around, and Daddy Tom had about 90 acres that he farmed, but when they had all of their land together, they had about 3,000 acres, I believe. Well, Daniel. Now Peter Rush was my daddy descended from Peter Rush, and my daddy's mother was Agnes Holland, and her mother was Mary Rush, and her daddy was Peter Rush from Ireland. So we're kind of, in a way, both of our families were from Ireland at that time, And my daddy had married, his name was Gipson because his mother, Agnes Holland, married a Gipson. And then mother's name was George because Mary Ann married George, and she had Tom and kept that name because he was a George. And then when Daddy Tom had a first wife, her name was Molly, and then he married another woman, and her name was Ruby. And Aunt Ruby was very good to us. She was our only grandmother we knew because my mother's mother died. She was Molly Sutton, and she died when my mother was 2 years old. And mother's little sister lived with with my mother's grandmother, but my mother wouldn't leave her daddy, and Aunt Ruby raised my mother. But she would go out in the fields with him when he would go out with the cotton to pick the cotton. They had the big long sacks as big as this rug going across here. And Mother would get on in another sack, and he'd have to take her through the cotton fields with her when he was picking cotton because she wouldn't let him out of her sight. So those were my ancestors, you know.
So how did your parents meet?
Well, my daddy was in the war, the First World War. He was in the cavalry, and my mother went to everybody was going to the train station to see the soldiers when they came home because it had been a long fought war, and they were all coming home. The war was over, and she met him there. She just thought he was the most best looking thing she had ever seen in her life. So that was they got married after a while. They got married. My mother was 19 and my daddy was 29. He's 10 years older than my mother. He lost some years in there, but he made them up.
So what about your grandfather? Did he play music too?
Oh, my daddy played the fiddle. He loved the fiddle. And he fiddled every weekend. They'd gather at one of the houses and they'd all just dance and hoe down and just have a wonderful time. And my Aunt Tenn lived there by my grandparents, Agnes and William Gipson. And her boys, she had 7 children, and her boys just loved to have fun. And they'd go swimming in the creek, and we'd just sit there and watch them. And we'd go out in the cornfields and just sit in the cornfields. And then they had a big barn, a real big barn. They lived over the hill from where my grandparents lived. Their grandparents too. And they would jump out of the barn and just swing from the top of the barn all the way down. And I just loved to go over there and watch them play. They just enjoyed life and had so much fun. And it was just a wonderful time to go see Aunt Tina and watch the boys and play and act up and jump out the barn. And the big horses, I love the big horses. And they'd hitch the wagon up and take us to Philadelphia because Tucker was just a little Indian settlement. And but there was a lot of white people around there. But they were farmers that had been there because they bought property there. Peter Rush bought his property in Tucker. And Daniel Rush had land grants that he could kind of keep in the family, you know. That's what he did. But one of my cousins was captured, and he went to World War II. He had to go off to war. And he was captured in Germany. And he was a war prisoner, and he said he just knew he was going to die. There wasn't any food or anything, but he said a lot of the boys did die because they couldn't eat the food that they had to eat. But he said he could pick the mold and the mildew and all off the food and was able to eat enough food to stay alive. But he said he didn't think he would live, but he did. And he's a beautiful boy. He's a beautiful boy. And I loved him very much. I love my cousins. But their dad, Pank, died a couple of years ago, and Aunt Tina died. And all of her children are dead except 2. The oldest one and about the 5th one. His name is Ed, and the oldest one's Jack. and she has 2 of her children still living.
So you had an aunt you were telling me about earlier that had a rifle?
Oh yeah, that was Aunt Kate. Aunt Kate. She was my granddaddy Tom George's sister, and they had a farm down from my daddy Tom's house, and she would go out there with that rifle. If she'd see a vagabond or somebody hanging around there, she'd go out there and chase him off with her rifle. And Mom would tell us about that. And she was amazing because she took care of her mother and daddy, and it's really amazing the way they lived. It was just a wonderful life for all of them, it really was. But I was going to say something else, but I can't think of what it was right now about them, about that. Oh, my granddaddy, Grandpa George, was in the Civil War, and they had to walk home from up north, and they had all gathered around with all the families and all the covered wagons and everything like they had after the Civil War, and they had taken a picture of the gathering, of the homecoming, and we have a picture of that. Oh, I volunteer for the Senior Olympics too, and Exxon gives me a grant for every 20 hours I put up in a quarter. They give me a $500 grant. So I really enjoyed being with some of them are 80 and 90 years old, and it's just really a pleasure to see how much fun they have and how much they enjoy being there and doing it, being able to do those sports and win a medal. They actually have a closing and everything. It's just amazing to me to see those people, how much they enjoy doing those things and can still do them. It's amazing. And I'll end it by saying I've been diagnosed with cancer for the 3rd time, first colon, then liver, and now lung. They were able to operate and stop the colon and liver cancers, but the doctors told me they couldn't do anything that would stop or cure this cancer. I pray that God will remember me, have mercy on me, and bring me into His kingdom. And I thank Him for my life and my family and the many gifts and blessings He has given me with all my heart. It's a wonderful life. Thank you.